Well, I figured it's time to lubricate this motor a bit because it's been sitting all summer long and I do use it a bit. So while I have it out, play with it a little bit. I'll turn it over and I'll show you the spots. I'm going to do this carefully so I don't knock it onto the ground. Okay. Well, this is one kind of Victrola motor. This is a pancake style motor for the portables. The first Victrola motor specifically designed for a portable machine. And they would refine this a bit more, and you'll see it again in the Victrola 2-60 to 2-55 and a few other ones too. But otherwise, it's a standard Victrola motor, has all the same parts as any Victrola motor, like your governor, your spring barrel, and all of that. These are a little easy to work with in that there is a screw down cover for the spring barrel and not the clip style. A lot easier to get off and on. You know, your governor and all that's pretty standard. Now, I rebuilt the governor on this one when I did the motor. And the places to put oil. Number one, your friction leather. That is leather. It must be oiled, otherwise you're going to get erratic speed and rapid wear of the friction leather. That friction leather has been replaced by me. That's why it's at full size like that. Otherwise you'll see them considerably smaller. If they're working, no need to replace them. Just adjust your speed and leave it alone and oil it. Whoa, too far, too far, too far. The bearings there and there. See where I'm pointing? Right there under that screw where the governor shaft runs into a little bearing cap right there. You have to put oil there. Grease on the gears. If you read the instruction label there, it'll say Victor motor grease must be used. Victor motor grease was Vaseline and black graphite mixed in with it. White grease is a nice thin grease, works very well on these. Does the same job with no problems. You want to put it on all the gears. Just don't get carried away with it. Don't slobber it on there, so it'll just make a mess. Just put it on the gears with your fingers, rub it into the gear, see there's enough on there, and then you just play the machine a few times, you know, well, 50 times if you want to distribute it, that's all. Oil underneath. You see this? Oh, I can't do it two-handed. See that shaft that goes through to your turntable? It's your turntable shaft. The bottom of that is a ball bearing. Right in there. A little drip of oil there. And again at the top of the shaft where it goes through to the turntable. You must remove the turntable for that. I haven't done it here. Well, I did before, but I already put it back on. Everything else is greased. Oh, and drop some grease on that part of the governor shaft right there. That shaft has to move. It slides. When the governor springs arc, that shaft moves. Has to be lubricated. And put some on the disc too, right there. Just so it stays lubricated and helps the leather slide easier. Really easy to do. You only have to do it once in a while. Every Victrola or mechanical phonograph needs this kind of service done. Once every 5, 10, 15, 20 years, or whenever you hear it making noise, you pull the spring out of the barrel, you clean the old grease off it, and you put new grease back in. I'm using modern grease in here, so chances are it's never going to need to be done in my lifetime. And that's pretty much it. You know, pivot points on the shaft there and on the other side every now and then. A little drop of oil in there, but that rarely, well, it moves when the governor moves a little bit, but that's it. You don't really have to do it too often. Well, there you go. I'll show you what it looks like spinning. This is one of the few machines you can actually do this with. I'm about to do here. Run it outside of the machine. It'll support itself on the shaft that goes through the spring barrel and on the central shaft there. But here you go. You get to see it. All the little gear. I could watch this for hours. See how those governor weights spring out like that and get wider and the shaft moves? It's got to have freedom of movement. That's what the oil is for. And that governor is what regulates your speed, controls the speed of the turntable, otherwise you'd be spinning at maximum velocity, and I don't even want to know how fast that might be, but it'll be quick. We got a lot of background noise here today, but you get the idea. Whatever happened to the concept of peaceful Sunday? Without leaf blowers, lawn mowers, cars racing by on the road. And this is a rural area. You would think it would be quieter. And with the VV-35, you also have gears up here that protrude through the motorboard that must be greased occasionally too. Those are your winding gears. There's two of them. Plus the shaft that runs through there. See if I can get a bit of a close-up. All in there. It's got to grease that up too. And a little dab at the end of the threads of your winding handle or crank if you prefer. That helps that stay nice and lubricated and keep it from getting stuck. And what kind of oil do I use? Any kind. Try to avoid the thinner ones. They're not really as good for this. Oil can's nice to have. This is one of my larger ones, but tiny ones work too. I try to avoid 3-in-1 because it tends to, that's mostly for, you know, it's good for electric motors and like that, but it could dry out a bit and get somewhat sticky. Anything that works in your car's engine, will work just fine in your Victrola motor. Okay, you could use Stp Motor Lube if you wanted to. Thin that. I would like to thin that out a little bit if I used it, but you can use that. Any kind of thick wet oil works. And the grease you see used on here is simple, straight, white lithium grease. Nothing fancy, very basic, a nice thin grease. Although some of the larger motors, the big multi-spring motors, I will use red grease on those, a little heavier duty, high pressure grease. The same grease that I use to protect equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars I use on this. It works just fine on the Victrola too. Although the fastest way to start a food fight on any public forum dedicated to these machines is to mention what kind of oil is the right kind. There is no right kind. Any oil you have is better than anything they had in the 1920s and 30s, okay? Anything. Whatever you can find. Gun oil, sewing machine oil, car oil, all of it will work on this. There is no magic blend. And some people like to use the old Vaseline and black graphite powder. You could do that too. It's messy as hell. I don't like to use it because it makes everything look like it's filthy already. It will work though. It worked excellently well back then and it'll work today. You can expect that Vaseline to have the potential to dry up in your lifetime, however, so keep that in mind. It makes also, one of the things I don't like about it is that everything you touch with it has a big black stain on it. Everything gets all over the tables, your clothes, your hands, migrates everywhere. So while I can make that particular formula, I don't do it. I stick with off-the-shelf, good old-fashioned white grease, or red grease, or green grease, or whatever high-pressure grease you got. It'll all work. Bearing grease, it all works. But there you go. Here's a look at a VV-35 motor spinning around. Strangely enough, this motor sounds a lot quieter when it's not in the box. But then that's a trick of the VV-35. I don't know, it's just that machine. Every one I've ever had sounds the motor always sounds louder than it actually is. It's just the acoustics. You know, the box itself becomes its own speaker, basically. So, you see it? A little grease fell off. Right in there. And there you go.